Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, New York. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here Sunday morning. Steve Cates, what's going on out there on the moon, on Mars? John Terrett, the economy. Nicole Maliotakis, Congressman Mike Lawler, Governor David Paterson, Suzanne Miller on what's going on in real estate. Andy Byford, he's back from the UK. He's helping on Amtrak. George Borrello, what's going on in Albany? Dr. Luis Diaz from Memorial Sloan Kettering. Is there progress in cancer? And let's start off with Mike Stoller and a real estate report.
Good morning. This is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. Office leasing is moving up. Residential conversion of office buildings to residential are in focus. And there are a lot of good things happening in the New York marketplace. So today I have a dean of the New York real estate market, my friend Ken Swig, who has a variety of jobs. One of them is a principal at Swig Equities, principal at Brown Harris Stevens, and needless to say, a principal at Hemsley Sphere over there. I'd like to thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Michael, and thank you for having me.
So tell me what's your thoughts about the market today with different areas in specific.
Sure. Well, if you look at the commercial marketplace, who would have thought that we would be in the situation in New York City where we are today, which is rather extraordinary. You've got Class A rents, pushing over $200 and in some places over $300 a square foot. You've got projects that on 625 Madison, where Related has decided to go build a commercial building instead of a residential building. And you've got the vacancy or availability rate that's falling. And the city is doing extremely well. The rental market and the residential is also doing very well. It's painful for some because the rents they're climbing and very, very high. And the condo market is holding up quite well. So overall, New York City, I would say, is come out of the COVID era and is doing rather well for ourselves.
What do you consider the reasons for doing so well?
One of the things that it was simply put is that New York is New York. We're the largest city in America. We're the financial capital of the world, and people want to be here. The other thing is that the resurgence of urban living, which has been 25 years in the making in America, is quintessentially here in New York City. Young people want to be here because it offers a variety of lifestyles in terms of whether it's the arts, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, the movie industry, the film industry, all kinds of things, business obviously, and it's a haven for people around the nation to want to be here in New York.
But it's impossible to live here for many people.
Well,
you have two young sons,
yeah.
Okay, and they have to live in New York. They have to pay rent. It's difficult.
That is a problem. So one of the big things that we're confronting is affordable housing. And there are some solutions that can come for that. But it is a very difficult thing. If you look at New York City's housing market, the whole market, we have, right now about 8.3 million people living in New York City approximately, and we have roughly 3.1 million housing units. Half of that, 2 million, is rental, and then you've got about 1.4 million plus or minus of things to buy. Roughly 1 million townhouses or 1 to 3 family homes, mostly out of the boroughs. There's only 10,000 in Manhattan, and then you've got approximately 200,000 co-ops, which is nothing, condos, pardon me, and then you've got about roughly 400,000 co-ops in the whole city. So we don't have housing, and one of the things we need to do is to increase the housing in the city, and especially affordable housing.
So what are your suggestions on how to increase affordable housing?
Well,
and tax the rich?
Well, here's the thing. I think you can create affordable housing without taxing the rich, and much like when you raise children, right? You find that when you give incentives to somebody, you get a better response than threatening punishment. So what I would do is to take, and the city doesn't have money to go do this. So how do you make that happen? One of the things is the city has an abundance of air, right? So that's free. So air rights you make available, and you make it with certain restrictions, if you will. So I would look at, which I've said before, the largest boulevard in New York City, Queens Boulevard, which is underserved in terms of FAR. It's got a low FAR area. It's got good public transportation. And I would say to that area, we're going to increase your zoning to 15-to-1 FAR if you choose. If you don't have to have it. But if you'd like it, we're going to take the city, we will take the air that we have for free and extend it to you for free. But you have to put 30%, 40%, 50% affordable housing in your project. This way you're giving incentives to developers. They, in my opinion, will go out and build, and you'll increase the housing stock tremendously.
But that's for rental housing.
Which is what we need typically. The for-sale housing typically is, yes, it's very expensive, but right now what we need is affordable rental housing for the population that works here. And if you give incentives to people, typically you're going to get and you have it attached to that, an affordable housing percentage, I think that you'll see a lot more affordable housing without the city having to pay money, without the city having to give funding, and without having to go out and get, other kind of alternative financings from the federal government.
So I look forward to having you back later on in the year to see how the predictions turned out. And thanks very much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Nice to see you, Michael.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Dr. Luis Diaz from the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And Dr. Diaz, we've all suffered for friends, relatives of cancer. My mom passed away in 1977, April 3rd. 50 years later, I would hope we made more progress in cancer.
Happy to do so, and thank you for having me. Cancer is such a scary word, and when I started my training about 25 years ago, I can tell you that we didn't have the same tools and the same therapies that we have now to treat cancer. We were diagnosing it too late. The therapies we had were not as effective, and the side effects were terrible. We now have tools to detect cancer early so that it can be treated with minimal surgery, minimal therapy, minimal radiation. And even in the advanced diseases, we have therapies now that can either cure certain subsets of patients or even lengthen survival from a few months to many years. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that someday there may be a cure, or do you think that our own body could cure things if our immune system worked better?
I think that the dream is, and I do think that we can use the word cure. The dream is that, A, we either prevent the cancer from happening in the same way that we prevent or control heart disease, or treat it in the same way that we treat an infection with antibiotics and just make it go away. And there's a growing list of cancers, because not all cancers are the same. We can't say we're going to cure cancer. We can cure individual subsets of cancers. But there's a growing list where we have therapies that can melt the cancer away, that can make the cancers disappear, or that can control them over a large period of time. And that's different than a few years ago, 5, 10, 15 years ago. We weren't thinking that way. But part of it is that the immune system, and we can control the immune system better because a lot of the research we've been doing has really taught us a lot. We can control it in such a way that in certain cases we can make the cancers either get controlled for a long period of time or even in some cases get cured. The cure means that you're in remission for 5 years or more. And those numbers are increasing.
The number one cancer that people think it's a death sentence, I guess, is pancreatic, is it?
Yeah, pancreatic cancer. But the number one killer in the United States is still lung cancer. But that cancer, those numbers are going down because of smoking cessation and just more understanding on how to screen for it. So if you are a smoker, you're going to want to get screened by a CT scan on a regular basis. But following that's colon cancer, which you want to be screened by colonoscopy. But you're absolutely right. We don't have a screening test for pancreatic cancer. And if you get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, it's a really tough tumor. And very few patients are cured, and survival has been shortened. But what you'll be hearing over the next few weeks is of a new drug that's come out that is based on the genetics of the cancer, where we can target a certain molecule and we can extend the life of pancreatic cancer patients. We probably won't cure them, but we can extend the life by a few months to maybe 1 to 2 years.
The other thing is determining what things people do that causes it. Any idea? Yeah. I mean, I've seen some articles in the last few months that in pancreatic tumors, they found plastics.
Let me begin with the plastics. We don't know yet. There's a lot of data that suggests that when you ingest plastics, it gets trapped in your body. But we don't know if it's causing cancer. And certainly cancer rates in some cases are going down, and in other cases are going up. In the case of cancers of the GI tract, pancreas cancer, colon cancer, gastric cancer, rectal cancer, those numbers are going up, and especially in young people. I'm seeing so many people in their 20s with cancers that you only saw in people in their 50s or 60s. Could plastics have something to do with it? I don't know. But we do know the causes of other cancers. So one, some people have a family history of cancer. That's about 10% of all cancers. What about just smoking or UV light, or if you get exposed with radiation? Those cause a big chunk of other cancers. But probably the most common cause of cancer across the population is bad luck. It's a mutation that happens in the gene as we age, and it's something we can't control. And so even though that there are causes to cancer, a lot of it's driven by bad luck.
I always think that you do something to your body or you don't give it the nutrients it needs to build up the immune system. And that's just my personal opinion.
And I don't think you're wrong. I think in the future, we're going to understand that even if you have the bad luck of a cancer being born in your body, that because your body, maybe with a little help with nutrition, maybe with a little help of a medication, will be able to clear that cancer before it becomes a problem.
Well, Dr. Diaz, thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do to help people, and we hope to talk to you again in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us like every Sunday is Governor David Paterson. Governor Paterson, what are you getting off your chest this morning?
Well, John, I had the privilege all the way back in 1983 for working for the Queens District Attorney's Office under supervision. And my job, along with the people in my unit, was to determine whether or not defendants could understand the charges against them and whether or not they could assist in their own defense. And these units were set up all around the city to try to stop the situations with people with mental health issues committing crimes. And the question was, do they know the difference between right and wrong? I think that we're starting to see a replication of that. Michael Katz is writing about it in the Post, and others are talking about it after the killing of the person a week ago, not this past Thursday, but the week before, when he was released from one of these institutions. Now, the Mental Health Information Service has always recommended that before a patient is released, that there has to be some kind of process. You just don't look at him and say, oh, he's smiling today. He must be happy. He won't bother anyone. And we're finding out the hard way that we don't have enough people to actually work in that particular area. So I would really hope that Mayor Mondani and the borough presidents and the city council looks at this, because there are very dangerous people walking down the street. Someone passed me on the street 2 days ago, and we were just passing each other, and he pointed and said, why don't you move over? And I'm in the middle of the sidewalk, he's in the middle of the other sidewalk, and he wants me to move over. These are the types of people that when you walk around you run into it. But more seriously, it's the type of problem that is going to be manifest if we have to start spending all kinds of money on the repair of our inability to keep people who have mental disease or disability hidden from the public.
There's some people that are never going to be cured.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Somebody has to make the determination. There are certain people, maybe 1/4%. You know, if we have 8.5 million people in New York City, what's 1% is what?
1% is going to be 80,000.
80,000. So we have maybe a half of 1%.
So that would be 40,000.
That will never be cured, and you can't leave them among civilized people.
You can't even, in many respects, leave them around other people like themselves, because they will inevitably attack each other. And it's a really sad situation, because sometimes these people got in this condition not by things that they actually did, but by trauma, abuse by parents, living in bad neighborhoods and having situations where they were violently attacked. But we, as much as we do have to have concern for those people, we also have to be concerned about 8.5 million people who live in New York City who really don't want to be exposed to this type of problem. And I just hope that the explanations that were given a week ago Thursday for why that individual was let out of an institution is updated and corrected the next time something like this happens.
You know, there's two categories here. One category is the, I guess, mentally ill. And the other category is the repeat offenders in crime. And maybe there might be a 1/4 or half of 1% of each category.
And one of the things, John, is many people who are mentally ill are not violent. They have mental issues, but they do have a situation where they can't deal with issues of society, so they wind up out in the cold and exposed and in difficult situations when they really are not intending to hurt other people, but almost are forced that way because they're not the services that can assist them.
Some of these judges, they allow these people back in the street again, and they go out back in the street, and they kill people, and they hurt people.
I sometimes wonder if the judges are men and women like you and me. They have feelings, they notice things, but when you watch this over a long period of time, you start to ferret out the ones who you don't think are really that dangerous from the ones who are. And all I'm saying is many of these reports that you can read on the individuals when they come into court should make it very clear whether or not they should be let out or not. Why they get let out in spite of the reports is a little bit of a mystery to me.
Governor, thank you for putting it on the main screen on Sunday morning.
Thank you, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Congresswoman Nicole Mayotakis. Nicole Mayotakis, how do you really feel?
Good morning, John. It's great to be with you as always. You know, this week was National Police Week. We had a bunch of NYPD officers and other law enforcement at the Capitol to honor the fallen. Remember, these are men and women that put their life on the line, and many have given their life. As a matter of fact, 111 names were added to the memorial here in Washington. 14 of those, by the way, are people who died with 9/11 related illnesses 25 years later. And so, you know, I'm always looking for ways on how we can make their life easier. And this week I've also introduced legislation that would prohibit people from interfering with police activity, right? We see these protesters, agitators getting in the way of police officers trying to make an arrest. And so my legislation would prohibit people from coming within 25 feet of officers trying to do their job. And that's going to keep officers safe and the public safe as well. But lastly, you brought up a strong point, John, about the need for New York to allow law enforcement to cooperate with federal authorities. You know, people are dying in New York. We had a 85-year-old veteran thrown in front of a track, killed by an illegal immigrant. We had another illegal immigrant killed, 4 individuals with arson. And yet the laws in New York, many times, by the way, these people are on the street because we've had that ridiculous bail law that allows these people to just be released back onto the street, and because the sanctuary policies do not turn them over. And I think it's time, John, that we look at holding local elected officials and judges accountable if they are participating in harboring these illegal immigrants. You hear about these stories all the time where judges are letting criminals go out the back door because ICE is waiting in the front for them because they are bad people that need to be removed from the country. So those judges need to be held accountable, and I think that they can be charged federally for helping these illegal immigrants evade federal laws.
At what point does the judge or say enough is enough? This guy committed 150 crimes. Why put him back in the streets in New York?
I mean, we just saw multiple people killed by people that had committed previous crimes and yet were still on our street for some reason. And some of that is Albany's ridiculous policy that does not allow them to hold people with bail. And some of it is the judge, that even when the judge does have discretion, few instances, by the way, where judges actually have discretion. And in those cases, you still see judges allowing these individuals back onto the streets. Judicial races, a lot of these people are appointed by the mayor and the governor here in New York, but there are judicial races, and people have to pay attention to those races because oftentimes if they're in civil court, they end up in criminal court, and these are the people who are doing these things. And so when it relates specifically to immigration, I think the federal government, the Department of Justice, needs to do more to hold these judges accountable because they are violating immigration law themselves, federal law themselves, when they are helping people evade federal law enforcement so they can remain in the country illegally. And Laken Riley, her murderer, was released in New York City after committing another crime. And he went on a bus, went to Georgia, killed Laken Riley. That was a 100% preventable crime, as are so many others that we've discussed. It is shameful. It really is. And it's time that these politicians and judges put citizens ahead of illegal immigrant foreign criminals who are committing and perpetrating these crimes, put American citizens first, or be held accountable by the federal government.
Somebody has to be held responsible. Maybe even if the politicians that appoint judges that do not do their job and create crimes. And look, I don't know what the federal government can do. Isn't it against the law? There's no such thing as sanctuary cities.
Well, I mean, the sanctuary cities are violating federal law. I mean, and that's the whole thing. At what point do we go from trying to be punitive towards city and states for their actions and then go after the actual elected officials and judges who are harboring? They are accomplices in a sense, right? They're accomplices to these crimes when they are protecting these individuals and helping them evade federal law. So I think that has to be a larger discussion by the federal government and the Department of Justice and, of course, the Judiciary Committee in Congress to see what we can and cannot do. But certainly, I believe that these judges simply need to be removed from the bench and maybe even charged for their part in harboring criminals and helping them evade federal law.
Congresswoman Nicole Maggiotakis, thank you so much. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With us today is Congressman Michael Lawler. He represents the 17th Congressional District. Michael Lawler, what do you want to start with?
No question, John. Thanks for having me. I look at the challenges in New York. You see a state budget that's proposed to be $268 billion, up $115 billion, in just 11 years. absolute insanity. They're talking about, raising taxes. They're talking about withholding pension contributions on the backs of our public employees. You look at, one crisis after the next in this state, and we continue to lead the nation in out-migration, have the highest tax burden. I've done what I can do at a federal level to help offset these high taxes in New York by lifting the cap on salt. But it's a real challenge. And from the tax and regulatory standpoint to energy, utility costs up 58% since they shut down Indian Point. It's why I've called for Indian Point to be rebuilt and reopened. You look at what the governor has done, blocking natural gas pipelines, blocking natural gas power plants, yet they gaslight everybody about the overall cost of energy and try to blame it solely on the utility companies and take no responsibility for the policies that they've put forth. Obviously, at a federal level right now, we're dealing with the situation in Iran, the president coming on the heels of his trip to China. We are dealing with major foreign policy issues coupled with really making sure that we get federal spending under control, get federal regulations under control, get permitting reform done, get a housing bill done. We're tackling a lot of issues all at once.
I understand the bill that was proposed and agreed to, I guess, with Governor Hochul and along with Mayor Mondavi. They feel that everything is a done deal. What do you hear?
Well, they've continued to work through the budget bills, but the main crux, the pied-à-terre tax, going after the quote-unquote rich, the reality is people like Ken Griffith don't need to be here. He has invested a lot in New York, and yet they're attacking him. It's crazy. The top 10% of income earners pay 72% of the federal tax levy. It's, they want to continually attack these folks and claim they're not paying their fair share. But the reality is they're investing in our communities. And somebody like Ken Griffin is investing billions of dollars in New York and paying
I understand that the
It's
meeting
crazy.
between Governor Hochul and Ken Griffith didn't go well. The mayor was trying to meet with him. I don't know what happened.
If I were him, why waste time? Zohran Mamdani believes in this crap. He believes in raising taxes and driving business out. Margaret Thatcher famously said the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And that's what New York is experiencing. They're talking about multi-billion-dollar budget deficits. They're trying to close it with the pied-à-terre tax. They're trying to close it by not making pension contributions. It's crazy, the fiscal crisis that these folks are creating, because there's not a program or an expenditure that they don't like.
Mike Lawler, the congressman, thank you for everything you do, and God bless you and God bless America.
No, thanks so much, John. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. What's going on in Albany? Well, the guy that's been giving us pretty good answers lately is Senator George Borrello. Senator Borrello, does anybody know what's really going on in Albany?
Well, that's the million-dollar question right now in Albany. This week we thought we would start to see some budget bills drop, and nothing once again. In fact, after a session on Thursday, we were told by the majority that it looks unlikely that we're even going to have budget bills next week, going into Memorial Day weekend. John, this is the longest we have gone without a budget in almost 20 years now, and the fifth consecutive year in a row under Kathy Hochul that the budget has been late. And this is a real problem. As you and I have discussed in the past, for schools and hospitals and not-for-profits, we have got schools that are going into their budget votes, trying to decide what they're going to put on there, whether they're going to raise taxes or lower taxes, and they can't do that because they don't know what kind of funding they're going to get because there is no state budget. So here we are, 6 weeks and counting without a New York State budget.
The relationship between what happened in Albany and what's happening in the city, what is the actual deal between the city and the state?
you've seen Mayor Mamdani kind of declare victory on his tax on top of a tax with that pied-à-terre tax, but yet that has not been finalized. The governor announced another $4 billion in aid to New York City to help the mayor close this budget gap. And I think at this point there might even be more. So the finances seem to be that Mayor Mamdani is getting a lot of what he wants out of Kathy Hochul and the Democrats because, quite frankly, she needs him and his supporters going into this election. So she's buying her votes $1 billion at a time, and it was from New York City's mayor and his supporters. So that being said, we still don't know what the total budget is going to be. Over about a week and a half ago now, the governor made an announcement, $268 billion. Again, another record-breaking budget. But we really don't know what the final numbers are because we haven't seen those budget bills.
I understand part of that money, they allowed pension funds not to be paid. Well, eventually they have to be paid, though.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt that there's a little bit of a financial shell game going on here. You know, messing with the pensions, looking at certain ways that aid is calculated. So there's no doubt that in that $4 billion is a little bit of accounting magic, if you will. But, you know, at the end of the day, there is a huge structural deficit looming in Albany at the state level and a structural deficit in New York City. So the fact that two entities, the state and the city, both of which are spending far more money than they're taking in, are still somehow thinking that we can do this through some sleight of hand is just very concerning. You know, New Yorkers are voting with their feet. They're leaving in droves, particularly people that pay taxes and employ people. And this is the result. This is a declining game for Kathy Hochul and Zoran Mamdani because they continue to punish the people that are actually paying the bills.
Is there anybody in Albany that promotes common sense?
Myself and my Republican colleagues, absolutely. We are the voice of reason. That's why we're seeing some things that are actually starting to change. They announced that the budget will include a 5-year extender, this damaging and dangerous electric school bus mandate. So an additional 5 years will be in the final budget, we are told. You've seen other things that, like the Climate Act, which the governor is desperately trying to pump some brakes and also extend that out. Because, as you know, our electricity prices, our energy prices are going up because of poor infrastructure and the lack of investment in infrastructure because of the fact that the Democrats in Albany, with their radical climate agenda, have told these companies, don't invest here. So they are trying to desperately put together something to provide some kind of relief. But I believe it's only temporary. You know, this is another election year stunt. Extending things out, no. We need to cancel those mandates. We need to repeal the CLCPA. We need to restore common sense. And we need to restore balance in our government. That's the real thing. And that is up to the voters. The voters of New York State, they're the ones that have to come to their senses and vote for common sense over radical idealism.
Senator George Borrello, thank you for the update. And, let's talk again real soon.
Great. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Andy Byford, and he's a special advisor to the Amtrak board, and he's in charge of transforming Penn Station. Well, Andy Byford, are we upgrading Amtrak? And you just give us a briefing of what the heck is going on.
Sure. Well, John, first of all, great to hear your voice again. I'm so happy to be back in New York City. It's my spiritual home. You know, love living in this city, love being back in amongst the vibe. And when this job came up, which it was about almost exactly a year ago, John, the president said he wanted Amtrak to take control of the what was called then the renovation of Penn Station. I jumped at the chance. I phoned my chairman. I said, Tony, please give me that job. I want to move back to New York. What could be more important and more iconic than overseeing what I call, not renovation, let's call it what it is, the total top-to-bottom transformation of Penn Station. So Amtrak has been tasked with running a P3, public-private partnership, master developer-led project to completely transform the station, to renovate and modernize it, to increase concourse capacity. We all know how crowded the station is, to make the station safer and more efficient, to accommodate future passenger growth, and ultimately, and this is something I feel very strongly about, to deliver a world-class experience. Because my view is this should be America's world-class station. So in no short order, in just 1 year, we have gone from a standing start to putting together a team that is almost on the cusp of being able to announce who the master developer is. We've run a 2-stage procurement competition. We invited letters of interest. Anyone could have applied. Anyone could throw their hat into the ring to be the developer. We ran that shortlisting. We've shortlisted 3 teams, John, and only yesterday we heard presentations from them. We're right at the business end of getting this competition concluded, and we will have chosen our master developer. So exciting times.
Well, I'll tell you, I prefer taking Amtrak when I go to Washington. Amtrak is better.
So, but we want to make it better still, John. So my project is just one of many things that are going on at Amtrak. Hopefully, you've had the chance to use one of our beautiful new Acela trains. They are transforming travel on the Northeast Corridor between Boston and D.C., so new Acela trains. We have been undertaking improvements at the other major stations, such as Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Chicago. We've got a lot of work underway. We're renewing bridges. We're renewing tunnels. We are upgrading our onboard service, bringing back premium catering, improving the Wi-Fi to make sure that you can stay connected. We are procuring a whole new long-distance fleet. But the one thing that I feel strongly about is in the middle of that Northeast Corridor, you've still got this suboptimal station, Penn Station, nowhere near good enough for New York. It was designed for 200,000 people a day. It serves 600,000 people a day. It's a miracle that we keep it going. So what we want to do is give New York America's world-class station. And so once we've chosen this master developer, there's about a year and a half in which we advance the design, we get all the NEPA environmental work done, and we get to financial and commercial close. But we then we are committed to having a shovel in the ground by the end of 2027 to then give New Yorkers, New Jerseyans, and all Americans really, a station worthy of New York City. So, people say to me, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? I don't know that until we choose the winning bid. But what I can tell your listeners is watch this space. We're going to give you an unbelievable Penn Station over the next few years.
Let's talk about high-speed rail. How far are we away from it, from making it even faster than the Acela?
That was my previous role at Amtrak. I was looking at high-speed options for Amtrak, and we were particularly looking at a potential route between Dallas and Houston, which is actually perfect in terms of all the variables you've got to get right. Because what you're looking for are city pairings that are basically of a distance apart that's really too long to drive but too short to fly. And you want to achieve downtown to downtown, minimal stops, pretty much a straight route, so no excessive curves where the train has to slow down, no interlining, so not working your high-speed train in and amongst freight trains or stopping trains or regional trains, fully enclosed, so no crossings, no risk of trespassers. That's how it works in Europe. That's how it works in Asia, and I believe that America must embrace that technology. So in the meantime, we do have the Acela, and the new Acelas do go faster than the old ones. They're capable of a higher speed. We're running at 160 miles an hour, but not throughout the route, which is why it's so important that progressively between Boston and D.C., which isn't straight, and that's something that, unless we spend huge amounts of money, it's impossible to achieve. But what we can do is upgrade the overhead wires. We can fix impediments, like there's a tunnel in Baltimore where the train has to slow right down to about 30 miles an hour. So we're building a new tunnel where the train will be able to go quicker. We've just begun the commissioning process. We're halfway through the process of the Portal Bridge at Newark. We've got half of the bridge already in service, which means the trains going between Newark and Penn can run a lot quicker. There's all sorts of things that are underway. But ultimately, my belief is this country needs to embrace high-speed rail where it makes sense. You're not talking about New York to LA, but corridors such as Chicago, routes out of Chicago, maybe a route to Toronto, maybe Charlotte to Atlanta, Dallas to Houston, Seattle to Vancouver, or on down to Eugene. They make real sense. Big population areas, relatively close together, around up to 800 miles. That's the kind of distance we really should be embracing high-speed rail in the future.
There were some people that came in to see us to talk about the Liberty liner. It's supposed to be a little bit faster than the Acela. Have you heard anything about that?
I have heard of that concept. I think it was actually the same train, but with a slightly different service model. So I'm aware of that proposal. My focus at the moment is purely on sorting out Penn Station. I'm certainly extremely busy doing that. But these are exciting times for Amtrak. We've got record ridership at the moment. We've gone way beyond what we had pre-COVID. The trains are absolutely bursting. We've introduced new services such as the Mardi Gras service between New Orleans and Mobile. Then we've also got the Borealis service up serving the Twin Cities. So it's a real growth time for Amtrak. Everyone at the company, from the president down, is committed to transforming travel for Americans. We want people to ride the rails. We really want them to enjoy our service, and we're determined to up our game.
Andy Byford, thank you so much. Let's catch up again real soon.
Most certainly, John. We love having you on board. Do let me know when you're next traveling. I'll come and ride with you.
I look forward to that. Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us is Dr. Sky, also known as Steve Cates. Well, Steve Cates, Sunday morning, what are you tingling our minds with?
Well, John, good morning. Happy Sunday morning to you and the listeners. You know, we go back to the origin of the universe. And many people in the science world are a little bit disturbed about the concept of a Big Bang. And many cosmologists, the people who study this creation scientifically, say it wasn't a Big Bang at all. And many believe that this universe, when it formed, may have been something called a big bounce. Now, what's that? It means that a previous universe, John, that expanded and then obviously shrank, formed a whole other universe. And this is a totally amazing story because, John, for so many years, this Big Bang theory has been generally accepted and taught in schools. But now we're getting some other side of the equation information.
Steve, they used to teach back in the 14th century, 15th, that the world was flat. So, I mean, there is no way that we know about expanding universes, and there's no way about another universe besides. I mean, This is all theories. Who comes up with these theories, Steve?
Well, John, I think to keep the cosmologists employed, it's kind of funny. They have to come up with other theories. But even more important, John, what could be more important than that, is that we really don't know about the origin of this universe. Because the other big problem, which is not for this discussion, is that time itself may totally be an illusion. And everything that we thought was factual, I mean, Einstein had some numbers that still make sense today from relativity that he developed. But the reality is, what I'm trying to say in simple words, and I think you would agree, the more we seem to know, the less confident we are. And that's why science continues. But the whole creation of the universe, many people are trying to describe it as it wasn't a big explosion. It was an expansion, but what did it expand from? That's a mystery.
Well, Steve, the big mystery for this month is what is the truth about UFOs? What is the truth of what the astronauts saw and NASA never allowed them to talk about it? What is the rover on Mars seeing, et cetera, et cetera? The other thing my mind has been expanding on is we know Flash Gordon has come true, you know?
Right.
And Star Trek, how true some of the stuff that we saw on Star Trek is it? We don't really know, but it's good to expand the mind and let the mind think.
Well, John, to expand on what you just said, I was very close to Gene Cernan, one of the last astronauts on the moon. And I, proposed those questions many, many times before. And he, of course, stared me in the eye and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So you can see this great cover-up.
Well,
comes from even the
by those words alone, you know it's a cover-up.
Oh, absolutely. But moving on, John, some of the interesting things in planetary science, Mercury, the closest planet to the sun, scientists and astrogeologists are saying that when Mercury formed, deep within its core, because it was a lot of carbon and magma, the stuff that bubbles out of volcanoes, that it's possible, very possible, that Mercury may have this gigantic patch of diamonds. Because how do you get diamonds, John? You have carbon under incredible pressure. So little tiny Mercury may be a literal, no, not a gold mine, but a diamond mine about how planetary objects have formed. So this is amazing. And John, we end off on the mystery of the week. This is a very interesting story. A statue of the Greek god Helios, the Colossus of Rhodes. It's one of the 7 original ancient wonders of the world. But what many people may not know, it only stood for 55 years. This obviously was one of the amazing patron god of Rhodes, 100+ feet tall. And this is interesting because one of those ancient monuments, one of the original wonders of the world, never lasted as long as the pyramids, which are over 4,500 years old. But we find out that in great Greek mythology, and I'm sure you have great expertise in this, there were 12 deities that were listed as, quote, hovering or living on top of Mount Olympus. And of course, Zeus gets the number 1 spot, Hera, the queen of the gods, and so many others like Apollo, the god of music and the sun, Artemis, the name of the spacecraft, the goddess of the hunt and the moon, Mars or Ares, Aphrodite, and so many others, Hermes, the messenger of the gods. And why I talk about this is that it's so fascinating, John, and I'm sure you could qualify this in greater detail, the great stories that we learn from astronomy and, of course, outer space from some of the ancients. They have the message kind of right, John. They were on the right path, studying and observing the heavens with great theories thousands of years ago. But stay tuned during this coming week for the next major launch, John, of the Starship 12. That is the most powerful rocket on Earth, Elon Musk, and the new Starship, crewed capsule that's on top. They don't have people in it yet. So we're expanding, John, and that is a very interesting launch because that's the gateway to the moon and Mars and beyond. And it seems like Elon Musk and SpaceX have certainly taken the lead.
Steve Cates, Dr. Sky, thank you, and we'll talk again real soon.
Have a good day, John, and everybody on Sunday.
The Cats Roundtable.
What's the state of the real estate market in New York City? Well, with us today is one of the experts in New York, and I would say one of the prime experts in New York, and we have Suzanne Miller. Well, Suzanne, what's going on?
John, I don't like a lot of what I see as far as the filth in New York, the dirty, the all of that, but the real estate market is holding up. The May report shows that right now, just this last week, 5 apartments went into the contract for over $5 million. 99% of asking price units sold for above ask over the last year, and 35% sold above $5 million. So the luxury listing market is on fire. The median price is $5.5 million, and I don't really see a slowdown. There's still a vacancy in the rentals. The sales market is, the average price is $1.5 million. And as much as we are, we see what's happening with this mayor, I think a lot of this is deals that were done during the last administration. And I think that right now, with the rentals up 6.5% and an average rent of $4,700 for a 1-bedroom, 2 bedrooms at $8,000, I don't see a slowdown. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Now, with this new pied-à-terre tax, and I finally realized what the word pied-à-terre means.
Foot on the ground.
I'm not French. The foot on the ground. So if the French used to say, if you have a foot on the ground, that's a pied-à-terre.
Right.
Tell us, how is the reaction in the marketplace for that?
Well, it's not going to affect the majority of people because, as I said to you last week on your show, there's only 11,000 homes that are secondary homes that people don't actually live in. So if you put your mother, brother, grandmother, or sister in this apartment, it's not considered vacant. So it really only kicks into a vacant apartment, and up to $5 million, there is no tax, and then it goes incrementally up from when you hit 10 million, it goes up to 1%, and at 25 million, it caps at 4%. So to me, this is just really it's just to appease people that don't vote, because these 11,000 people do not vote, and I don't think it's really, to me, it's more of a psychological game than it is going to affect people wanting to sell their apartments, because they're not going to. New York is still New York, and it's too big to fail. Listen, we've been around 400 years. Is 4 years or 8 years of a mayor going to kill this city? Probably not. The office market is hot, and like right now, even Citadel, as we talked about earlier, there have the 6,000 people currently working in Citadel right now. Those people they make about $500,000 a year. This is the creme de la creme that are living in New York City. We don't want them to leave. For every person that leaves, the numbers are we lose 7 jobs. We lose restaurants, we lose Ubers, we lose bodegas, we lose hair salons. We don't want these people to leave. But New York still is too big to fail.
Well, Suzanne Miller, keep us updated, and we'll talk again real soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The markets, up a lot, down a lot. Where the heck are we? John Terrett, give us the pulse of the situation.
John, good morning. This has been one of the busiest weeks for a very, very long time. And on Friday, Reuters began reporting that SpaceX has chosen the NASDAQ in Times Square for its massive IPO. The story will be more about as the week goes on. But looking back to last week, I guess it has to be President Trump and President Xi in Beijing. Lots of nice words exchanged, but few deliverables. Now, deliverables are diplomatic speak for show me the evidence. Where's the contracts? There don't seem to be too many of those. Yes, Boeing's getting 200 planes. That's good. Yes, the Chinese have promised to buy more soybeans. That's good, but nothing really beyond that. Now, President Trump said, look, we made some fantastic deals over there. President Xi said, yes, but no details yet, so we'll just have to wait and see. I guess the important thing is that the relationship between Washington and Beijing has improved somewhat in the course of the last handful of days. Last week, CPI, PPI coming in way hotter than expected. CPI up 3.8% in April, PPI at 6%. That's dangerous because we're going to have to pay those prices when that stuff actually comes to the stores and we buy it. On the other hand, retail sales were up 0.5% in April. That's the third consecutive in monthly terms, and it shows the consumer is still resilient, although there is some worry that they may be dipping into their savings to pay for stuff. There was a huge IPO last week, Cerebras from California, Cerebras. They are a maker of AI chips and data centers, and they want to be the next NVIDIA. They've got a long way to go, of course, but they might be one day. And they got off to a good start on Thursday. They were up 90%, and then they closed up 68% on their first day. Not bad for an out. Well, on Friday, they were down around 5%. The big cryptocurrency story of the week, Senate banking has finally marked up the Clarity Act, so now they merge it with the Agricultural Committee version, and hopefully there'll be a vote on this in June or July. This is a framework for all cryptocurrency trading in America. It's very, very important. And, of course, the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P, as you hinted, were all flirting with records last week, but not on Friday because yields were up and so stocks were down, and that was worry about inflation. As for the week ahead, well, the big one will be Wednesday. NVIDIA, the last of the big tech names to give us their earnings. That's next Wednesday, the 20th. The first thing Jensen Huang has to worry about when he comes back from Beijing and goes to work again on Monday will be preparation of those figures. And, of course, Kevin Warsh is now the chairman of the central bank, the Federal Reserve. He's off and running, and he faces the highest inflation in 3 years, something I bet he would rather not face. John.
Well, John Terrett, thank you for the update. Except the inflation is temporarily. Hopefully the war will be over and things will get better. Thank you for calling in, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, John, so much as always. See you next Sunday. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. Thank you for being with us for the Cats Roundtable Local Edition, the #1 show on Sunday mornings in New York. Keep listening to us for the Cats Roundtable National Edition between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So we'll be back to you in a few minutes after the news.